15, 2010, a 39-year-old man named Gavin Collins was released from the HMP Ranby prison in the UK. His freedom would last less than 24 hours, as the very next day he suffered a severe mental breakdown, the result of which was captured partially across several video recordings that later appeared on YouTube. This is the story of his rampage. It began at approximately 9 a.m. in the city of Nottinghamshire when Gavin left his home. As he walked down the sidewalk, those in the area reported him acting strangely, muttering to himself that he was Jesus and that he was invincible. Without warning, he then turned his attention to a random home, which he forcefully entered, stole a man's car keys, and took his vehicle, taking off with no apparent destination. Inside the car, the owner just so happened to have two cameras, one being a standard dash cam and the other facing inside the vehicle, giving us a look at Gavin and his apparent mental state. Just at a glance, it's obvious that Gavin is completely unhinged. For some reason, he was utterly filled with rage, ripping off the rearview mirror and yelling obscenities and incomprehensible threats at no one in particular. I'm messaged. I'm Jesus. I'm descendant of God. And you love me up. Watch this. And most concerning of all is the speed in which he's traveling, as he starts driving faster and faster, swerving in and out of cars as he passes through busy residential areas, as he reaches speeds that have been estimated to be anywhere from 85 miles an hour to well over 120. Watch this now! I'm getting stronger and stronger. But somehow, despite countless close calls, every time he avoids collision, at least for the time being. In an instant, Gavin smashes the vehicle into a brick home at full speed, with the impact being devastating. And yet somehow, through the destruction, Gavin was not only still alive, but completely unharmed, and also completely unfazed. He pulled himself from the wreckage and immediately turned his attention to a woman driving nearby, and within moments he had forced his way into the vehicle, and was behind the wheel once again, continuing this deranged driving spree, until once again he crashed. And much like the initial collision, he survived, walking away unscathed before turning his attention to another random home. In pursuit of stealing his third vehicle, he grabbed a nearby concrete slab and began to smash through the home's doors, bloodying his hand in the process, before eventually making entry. Inside were a mother and her two children, one of which was 5 years old, and the other wasn't even a year. Gavin approached the terrified family, yelling and demanding that the mother give up her car keys, telling her that he was Jesus, and that, because I'm Jesus, I will kill you if you don't give me the keys. Without hesitation, she did as he said. Gavin then went to each member of the family, and with his injured hand, he drew crosses on their forehead, out of his own blood, before taking off with his third stolen car. Once again, Gavin was driving manically, though this time he was even more reckless, crashing into a brick wall and then a cop car, before setting his sights on a pedestrian. While speeding through a neighborhood, Gavin would see a man standing innocently near a bus stop, and for whatever reason, the sight of this man enraged him, causing Gavin to slam on the brakes and reverse the vehicle, stepping on the gas as hard as he could, and crashing directly into him, leaving him lying there with devastating injuries. Gavin quickly exited the vehicle and found the man lying motionless on the ground, prompting him to shout, "I've killed him. I've killed the devil." Minutes later, Gavin would crash yet another car into yet another home, though this time the police weren't far behind. Finally bringing his disturbed driving spree to an end, The man that Gavin had struck was 87-year-old Terry Radford, a retired teacher whose injuries were catastrophic, with the man passing away soon after. According to his family, Terry was an incredible grandfather, father, and son. The footage is genuinely horrifying, but what's most shocking of all is the fact that any of this was even allowed to happen. As stated previously, this was Gavin's very first day out of prison, and based on the behavior he exhibited whilst in prison, he really should have never been released. Gavin was granted an early release in March of 2019 for charges based around burglary, but just as he was set to be freed, it was discovered that he had submitted an adulterate drug test, which caused his case to be re-examined and resulted in his release being postponed. In response, Gavin lost his mind. Later that month, he assaulted a prison guard before spraying him with an unknown liquid that contained bleach, before proceeding to set his cell on fire and attacking another officer with a piece of wood. Due to his actions, Gavin was placed into an isolated cell, where less than a week later he started yet another fire, and when an officer entered his cell to put it out, Gavin struck them in the head and pulled out a plastic knife, threatening to slash him, stating that it would be a thrill to kill him. Gavin's stay in prison clearly hadn't rehabilitated him. In fact, it seemed to have made him more violent than ever before, and more mentally disturbed. Though shockingly, despite all of these additional crimes, Colin's release would go on to be approved less than 2 weeks later, with Gavin being set free on April 18th, and within just 24 hours, Terry Radford would be brutally killed. Gavin was sentenced to 21 years in prison, and during his trial it was revealed that no drugs were found in his system, and instead this all seemed to be the result of some sort of psychotic episode that just so happened to be captured on camera in one of YouTube's darkest videos.